Wisconsin is going back to work.
I'm Steve Walters.
And I'm J.R. Ross.
This is Rewind, Wisconsin Eye's summary of this week in the Capitol. It's Friday. Do you know where your governor is? Governor Scott Walker's recent travels show how seamlessly an incumbent governor blends official, public events, and campaign stops this spring, months before he wants voters to re-elect him on November 4. But traveling in state cars and planes to official visits, and then having the campaign pick up costs of political events is something Mary Burke, Walker's likely opponent in November, can't do, and Wisconsin Eye mapped the governor's travels over a 2-week period. Walker can hold ceremonial public bill signings that puts the governor before local TV cameras and local officials several times a day. That's why Walker went to King on April 4. There he signed a bill authorizing more nursing home beds for veterans. TV cameras were welcome. That's why Walker went to Milwaukee Police Headquarters. There he signed a bill spending $150,000 state dollars to expand ShotSpotter. In another public bill signing ceremony, Walker went to Marinette to sign 7 bills fighting the growing epidemic of heroin abuse and deaths. Walker also signs bills in private ceremonies, but in front of smiling local officials and legislators who collect bill signing pens. He does that anywhere in the state. Aides sent out a press release late on Wednesday that listed the 55 bills he had just signed in the Capitol that day. But wearing his governing hat, Walker also blends those official bill signings with meet and greets at businesses headed by CEOs who like his politics. Walker's campaign can add re-election stops to his schedule. Those are stops the campaign pays for and stops often not disclosed to news reporters. The exception was Walker's 6 stops on April 15, when he and Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefisch formally announced their re-election bids. With the campaign picking up travel costs, Walker and Kleefisch visited 6 regions of Wisconsin and 6 media markets. They were Dane, which is near Madison, La Crosse, Eau Claire, Schofield near Wausau, Green Bay, and just in time for live TV shots on the 5 p.m. news, Milwaukee at State Fair Park. At the end of that day, April 15, Walker's campaign team scored that as 6 media markets visited and plenty of free media news coverage. And just to update that governor's travels feature, yesterday the governor was in Milwaukee and Grand Chute. One of those was a bill signing. Okay, JR, let's kind of recap. We talked about the historical turnover in the Fox Valley last week. Let's run them down one by one. What has happened in the 6th congressional since we
now have Senator Joe Liebaum in on the Republican side. He joins Glenn Grothman, another state senator, and Dewey Strobel. A couple notes about those guys. One, Grothman gets a free pass. Both Joe and Dewey give up their seats to run. Grothman's promised out conservative his opponents, and Dewey this week said don't trade one career politician for another. So we'll dig it at Joe and Glenn. We've also got former Dodge County Sheriff Todd Nels looking at running.
Is he R or D? I forgot. R?
On the Republican side still, John Hiller is still looking at it. This is a former Walker treasurer. And now we have a Brian Blum, kind of a former aide to Duffy. Congressman Duffy's out in D.C., Mequon native, also looking at running. Again, it's a Republican-leading seat in a good Republican year, environmental-wise, at least what we're seeing right now. Mm-hmm. And it's a once-in-a-lifetime chance, possibly. You know, I mean, like when Pete Tri first ran, I was in single digits for age. So it's a good time. If you're a Republican, you want to get it. And on Dem side, still just Mark Harris, the Winnebago County executive, is the only one announced at this point.
Are you hearing any other Ds in addition to Harris?
A couple of them looked at, like Justin Nichols, the Manitowoc mayor, but he turned it down. I talked to Jessica King, former state senator. She said no. So it looks like, Mark is the guy.
Okay. How would you characterize Mark? Is he a progressive?
The Democratic thinking about him is that if you get a really conservative candidate out of that primary, and it's not a deep red seat, that Harris has a banking background, was on local government and then county exec, he could peel off some moderate and even Republican-leaning voters if he does it right. And there's a macaca moment or a some girls rape easy moment from the GOP nominee. Now, will that happen? Who knows? I mean, I still get the impression from both sides that is definitely a Republican seat to lose,
Okay.
but they could lose it.
And then the House seat, the 19th Senate, there's been a lot of action in that over the last week. Why don't you give us the summary?
Bottom line is Roger Roth is in, and they're clearing the field for him. There's no coincidence that Roger announced Monday afternoon, and not 5 minutes later with statements from Governor Walker and Senate Majority Leader Fitzgerald praising Roger and endorsing him. That was a sign of the Barrels, stay out. So State Rep Dave Murphy said he's not going to run. Steve Wickert said not going to run, former state lawmaker, and Jack Voigt said not going to run. So
Okay.
it is Roger's nomination to lose right now, but that is the most 50-50 seat on the ballot in the Senate this fall.
So that one is really in play between Roger Roth, if no one else gets in, and Representative Penny Bernard Shaver.
Absolutely. Rogers, remember, they tout his name ID because Toby Roth was his uncle, a congressman from the 8th Congressional District. He's got deep ties to the district with his family's development company. But that's what I also heard in 2010 about how he's going to be the next congressman from the 8th District. Then Reed Ribble came up and won that nomination. So Rogers will retool the campaign operation, from what I'm told, and kind of refocus on what a Senate race is going to be compared to what he did before.
And then that final Senate seat we talked about last week, that's the 9th Senate. That Joe Liebem has got to give it up to run. Any action in that the last week? What's
Democrat
the update?
Martha Lanning is still in. She is kind of the one they recruited running against Joe, so
Yes.
she's in there for a while.
Right.
Nichols, the Manitowoc mayor, had thought about it, so this week not going to do it. So on the Republican side, we have Jill Hennessy, who's a city council member up there, looking at running, and Barry Nelson, an Army vet who moved in there a couple of years ago, also looking. That's still kind of being shifted right now, so we might see Ken emerge in the next week or two.
Why? I'm curious. The Mayor Nichols, he's got 2 trains leaving the station, 6th ED and 9th State Senate. Why is he not expressing any interest in that?
What he said this time was that he got elected to city council at 18. He's now 27-ish.
7, I think.
He said he put off something in his personal life to run for public office. One of them was education. Hasn't finished college yet. He wants to finish his degree before he runs for higher office.
Wow.
So that's his official explanation, at least.
Also this week, Governor Scott Walker on Time's 100 most influential people in the world. Now, that got him posed on front of a Harley in front of the Capitol. Do voters on November 4, do you think they care about that? Or is that more about putting a presidential thing?
The Dems want voters to care about this guy might not be around as governor, or he's at least not focused on running Wisconsin. He's focused on his ambitions, his aspirations, if you will. So that's going to be an issue a little bit. I don't get the impression that's a deciding factor, if you will. It's still a huge hurdle for Governor Walker from being governor to president. As you remember, Tommy Thompson, just because you think about it doesn't mean you're going to do it, kind of thing. Plus, too, look at the poll out from PPP this week that had Republicans in Wisconsin preferred Ryan over Walker by a slight margin to run for president. So there's still some question of what will those two do. And folks out in D.C. seem to think that Ryan won't run. So if he doesn't run, that makes Walker more,
Okay. The Time magazine shout-out was written by New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Was that him wearing the RGA hat?
Oh, yeah.
It was. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's what that was all about. Okay, time for WisPolitics Stock Report. Go for it.
Rising UW system salaries. We've talked before that, there's been a debate going on since before I got here about how much you get paid at UW system. And our system's argument always is we need money to retain talent. If we don't retain the talent, we go downhill. Lawmakers keep going, but you have all this money. You have this slush fund, like they call it. Why are you asking for more in tuition and tax dollars? But UW system won this week. They got a bump for vice chancellors and vice presidents. Got a, kind of an increase in the range. Speaker Voss wasn't very happy about it. The only member of the Joker committee to vote against it. But at least this time, they got a little bit of help on the salary front.
And the audit committee just signed off on their plan to disclose future surpluses. So it seems to me like new President Ray Cross is making nice up on the Capitol, isn't he?
Republicans, the fact that Republican lawmakers are coming out in the finalist process and singing his praises was a sign that they like this guy, because he's built up a reputation with lawmakers, Republican lawmakers in particular, of being upfront with them, at least having a working relationship, and they like that. So he's trying very hard to win them back over. I don't know if he'll ever get there. He's trying very hard.
Mixed.
Mary Burke, I haven't talked to anybody this week who thinks Brett Hulsey can win the Democratic nomination for governor, but he can make her life more difficult the next several months if he can get on the ballot, if he's running. The issue with Hulsey is, it's one thing to have a fringe candidate running against you for the nomination.
Right.
People will ignore that fringe candidate. But he's a fringe candidate with an office that gives it some legitimacy and almost forces the media to at least give him some attention. He's already talked about challenging her to debate in all 72 counties, and if she fails to do so, which everybody expects she will, he'll follow her around in a chicken outfit and call, too chicken to be governor. And the thing is, with Brett, what will he do next to get attention? That's an issue for Democrats where they're a little bit fearful of what will this guy do. Well, Republicans are like they're thrilled. This is an issue.
They are. Does Mary Burke have to take Hulsey seriously?
She, from what people have told me this week, she should ignore him completely.
Okay.
Don't pay him one lip service. Talking to her campaign this week about a couple of things Brett said. They haven't commented, haven't been interested. They're focusing on Governor Walker, and there's a good reason why. I mean, the public policy polling out this week, granted it's a Democratic firm, but it had it 48-45 Walker over Burke. She's within shot firing range of Governor Walker. So why get distracted by Brett Hulsey? Keep your focus on Walker. Keep going forward that way.
When I interviewed Peter Barca in a civil dialogue this week, I asked him about the Hulsey challenge. He said, I don't think it will have any influence at all, and the direction he referenced to Hulsey is going is not only hurting himself politically, but even his personal career.
Look at it this way. Every Democrat I've talked to this week has pointed out to me that if Brett Hulsey ran for election for his assembly seat, he would have lost. He's already got 2 challengers. So here's a guy who can't win his assembly seat, that's not going to run for governor. And then depends who you talk to or who you want to believe. Hulsey may have approached Robin Vos, the Speaker of the Assembly, about joining the Republican caucus at one point this past session. I mean, things were so bad with the Assembly Democratic Caucus at the end of this session that they didn't invite him to meetings of the members. So there is not really a relationship there to speak of.
Barca told Wisconsin Eye he's no longer a member of our caucus. Okay, following?
The Milwaukee streetcar, and it's been a pet project of
the streetcar named mayor?
Yeah, for a long time he's wanted this thing, but now the PSC votes this week 2-1 that the city can't force utilities, ratepayers, to pick up the cost of moving utility lines, which at one point was $65 million, now it's down to $20 million maybe, but it's a big expense to get the streetcar in. For the backers of streetcar, it's like, look, we want local control, and you're stepping in and taking it away from us. And B, you guys will do anything for roads in Madison, you Republicans, but you won't do anything for a streetcar. Why? Why can't Republicans? It's like, look, this isn't needed. It's a boondoggle. I mean, they see this as a complete boondoggle, waste of money. Same thing with the high-speed train between Madison and Milwaukee. It's the same vein for them, and it's become a conservative talk radio rallying point against Milwaukee.
Boy, has it ever. I heard that. Okay, just one quick on Rewind next week. JR and I will be previewing the Republican State Convention. We will be interviewing GOB Vice Chair Brian Schimming. Is that his actual title? Thank you. He's going to come in. So that's Rewind for April 25th. I'm Steve Walters.
And I'm J.R. Ross.